Hi, everybody. Welcome. Welcome, everybody. I'm going to give you guys a few minutes to get settled down. I'm expecting a lot of students today, so let's give it like 2-3 minutes while everybody gets here. And in the meantime, I'm going to share my screen. And then, like always, I'll do a little introduction, and then we're going to start. Today is going to focus on the essay portion. Hi, everybody. I hope everybody had a good Monday, good start to the week. We have a really big class today with a lot of students. So I'm just waiting a few minutes to make sure that everybody's settled, that everybody can hear me, can see my screen. So everybody who's here already, you guys can just sit tight, and then I'll officially start in just a few more minutes, okay?
Oh, I thought I told you about it. Never mind.
All right, so I see that a bunch of students are still joining, but just for the interest of time, I'm just going to start with an introduction and just introducing myself again and what I planned for today. So the people that are familiar with me, the people that I saw this weekend, my name is Olga. I'm a third-year medical student. I'm here to give you guys sort of like a crash course in the last few days before your Hunter exam. So far on this weekend, we focused on reading comprehension. Whoever wasn't able to make it to the weekend lesson, I'm more than comfortable with sharing those notes. So I'm gonna put my email, like I always do, into the chat right now for everybody to see. And if you guys need the notes or anything else, if you guys have questions for me, you know where to reach me. I think that anybody that has asked me from notes from the weekend should have seen a response already. So if you did not get a response from me, just email me again, because that means the email went to my spam or I didn't see it for some reason, but I tried to respond to everybody. And hi to everybody. Thank you for all the hellos. Absolutely, you need a notebook today. I always recommend taking notes. Okay, so the goal for today is to review essay writing. My goal for today is to review some common prompts that we've seen in the last few sort of tests. And then I want to go over the rubric with you guys so you guys know what they're grading you on, so you can know what you need to improve, what needs to be present in your essay for you guys to do well, right? It's important for you guys to know what you're graded on, so you can make sure to include that. And then we're going to talk about essay structure and then literary devices, which you've heard me mention when we are doing the reading passages, but specifically how you can apply those reading devices into your essay writing in order to, elevate your grade in any way that you can. And that's going to include imagery, showing instead of telling. It's going to include using comparisons and similes and metaphors and all that kind of stuff. Okay. So that's kind of the plan for the day. Yeah, go ahead.
Are we gonna actually, cause I saw on the thing that we're taking a test, so is that gonna happen? For the essay, like I'm gonna actually write an essay today, or are we just talking about it?
No, I was just planning to review essay writing and teach you guys some pointers. There might be a session later in the week where we do a timed full essay. No problem. I want to encourage you guys not to get carried away in the chat and say random things to everybody. I like keeping the chat open to everybody because I find that sometimes you guys ask good questions and answer each other's questions. But because we have such a large group of people, if it does get distracting, if you guys are going to talk on the side, I'm going to disable the chat so that you guys can only DM me. So try to just keep it to a minimum and let's try to keep it focused. And let's try to keep it like a collaborative effort in which we like all help each other and answer each other's questions and stuff like that. Okay, perfect. Okay, so are you guys ready to get started? All right, so let's start. So here is a list of Kweller Prep's Hunter essay topics from prior years. I put this up here just because I want you guys to be comfortable with some sort of examples in an essay. I'm sure you've written many essays before in your regular classes with Kweller Prep, and I'm sure that you've seen the practice tests that are release prompts, but here are just some other ones that are likely to come up. In my experience, I find the New York City theme to come up a lot. So if there was one essay that I would have practiced really well, it would be something to do with New York City. Hunter's campus is in New York, and that's kind of a big part of, like I think you have to live in New York in order to apply there. It's a big part of their sort of like theme. So that seems to be something that they like. So if I were to have like one essay really like, polished and like not memorized, because you're not going to go in and have like a direct, that doesn't make sense because you don't know the prompt. But if I had one that I really practiced well and that I polished well, it would be a New York City one in my experience, something to do with New York City. You should be really comfortable with describing New York City, using a lot of imagery, having some sort of like adjectives in the back of your head, similes, metaphors, all that kind of stuff that you could use to describe our city, because that's something that I definitely see coming a lot. Okay, so I will send you these notes. So I don't want to harp on this page too much, but this is just a good page to have, especially if you guys want to practice in the last few days of essay topics to write. You can use this. Okay, so let's get into the grading rubric, right? This is where we're being graded on. This is what's important. Yeah, absolutely. Whoever needs the notes, I put my email in the chat and I'll put it in again and I'll send you this whole thing of notes and any extra notes that we take as part of this package. Okay. So the first thing that they're going to be grading you on, which is where I want to start down here, is just that you are addressing the prompt and answering the question. So 1 point is just that you are answering the actual prompt that they're giving you. So if they ask you to write about New York City and then you write a whole perfect essay about your family, you're going to lose the point here. Does that make sense? So 1 point is just that you are answering the prompt directly. This isn't necessarily, this is, I think, the easiest point that you can get. All you need to do is answer the prompt that they give you and stay on topic, have a clear thesis statement. So that one is kind of like easy points, self-explanatory. Does anybody have any questions with that one? Okay. Yeah, Aria.
Are you expecting us to like make like a clear thesis statement, or should we kind of like include it into like an overall statement about the essay?
No, you need to have a clear thesis statement. So we're going to go over the structure of the essay and how I would structure it and where I would write it shortly. Like let's do the grading rubric. And then the next part that I was going to do is like going over the actual structure of the essay and how to write a thesis, how to formulate topic sentences. So we're going to get into all of that. So I'll answer that question in just like a few minutes. Okay. Absolutely. I recommend that your thesis statement is one of the last sentences in your intro, usually the last sentence. Yeah, Ardo, go ahead.
Will the thesis be like an overall kind of thing about your passage? and like all the body paragraphs will have a bit of the thesis in them.
Yeah, that's exactly how it works. That's a great way to describe it. Your thesis is basically your main argument. And then after that, each sub thing, each topic sentence in each paragraph is then going to go back and support the thesis. So a general way that I like thinking about it is, let's say I'm arguing for all the reasons that chocolate ice cream is the best. I would say chocolate ice cream is the best because it makes me feel good, because it matches my dietary needs, and because of some other reason that I can't think of, right? And then each paragraph subsequently to that, and then the next paragraph is going to say chocolate ice cream makes me feel good because blah, 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 blah. And then I'm going to support all the ways that chocolate ice cream makes me feel good and why that makes it my favorite flavor. And then in the next paragraph, I'm going to talk about all about how chocolate ice cream is going to like match all my dietary needs, and that's what makes it my favorite flavor. Does that make sense? So it's kind of like you start really like broad and you have this argument, and then in each topic paragraph you're then like getting a little bit more narrow with it, but you're always going back and saying like, ultimately this is why I'm supporting that main argument again. And then once you go into your conclusion, you get why it again, and you like kind of restate your thesis. But I'm going to write all of this down and try to give you guys examples. So don't worry about it too much. Let's just get through the rubric so we know what we're being graded on, and then we'll get to that part, okay? Okay, everybody that has questions. Joshua, what's your question?
Yes, so about like the body paragraphs, I read somewhere that like the correct format is like so basically the first body paragraph should have like the best detail, second one should have like the least, and then like the third one should have it in the middle. Is that true? Or
I mean, you definitely want to start strong. So I would say put your first body paragraph there. I guess that technique is trying to say like start strong, dip a little bit, and then be strong again. I mean, ultimately you want all of your details, all of your supporting things to be as good as possible. But you can use that strategy. It's not, ultimately that's not something that's going to make or break your essay. If you look at the way that you're graded, that's not really like part of the grading. Does that make sense? Like the way that you would order it. Yeah, Juliet, sorry.
So when like what they're asking you during the essay, what if the questions just like describe this? Would you still include a thesis statement? Like what would be your thesis?
Those are a little bit harder. I see what you're asking, but you would still technically need to write a thesis because that's exactly like they're grading you on that. So they're expecting you to write one. So if it's something like describe blah, 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 I would just write, like, let's say it's describe New York City. I would say,
We can't hear you.
sorry. Okay, I would say something like New York City is the metropolis of a lifetime or something like that, like some big broad descripting factor. And then I would give 3 reasons about why I would describe it broadly like that. And then each body paragraph would be like breaking down those reasons further, something like that. Okay, let's see, Nolan.
I heard that when writing an essay, you have to write in scene or write like when something's happening, like in the moment.
You mean like present tense?
Yes, and also you have to write like when you're doing something. You have to be in like a situation or something that's happening to you that you have to write about.
I mean, that depends the prompt they give you. Okay, Elia, sorry if I'm like saying your guy's name wrong.
It's Elia, and the question that I had was like depending on like what the prompt is, how many paragraphs are you supposed to write?
So ideally they want 5 paragraphs. They want an intro, 3 supporting, and a conclusion. I will say that if you're running out of time, it is okay to do 2 supporting, or it's okay to like have a really short conclusion, like just 1 or 2 sentences. But ideally, if you have enough time and in a perfect world, it should be 5 paragraphs. So Thea, again, sorry if I'm saying your name's wrong, just correct me.
No, you said it right. So my question is, what do they have to be CER, ER, or like CER in general, like claim, evidence, reasoning? Because I don't think that would really fit the essay, but I was told that. I don't know.
I mean, that's a technique, right? Ultimately, what you're trying to do is you're trying to give your sort of argument and then say, this is why my argument is right, and then explain that further. So that's why they say that. In any way or order that you do that, that's okay. Okay, Sabrina.
For the essay, what if you're like running out of space?
That's a logistic concern. We would have to ask Miss Francis. To my knowledge, I don't think they give you any extra paper. So try not to run out of space, try to write small. And you're also like, you would have practiced enough, right? So you should be comfortable with the structure such that like, you don't need to go on. And you also have a time limit, so you don't have that much time to just keep writing. And more doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be better anyways. All right, guys, I want to get through the rubric. I promise I'm going to leave time at the end for questions. I just don't want the whole thing to turn into a Q&A session. And we're also going to have the same 2-hour thing tomorrow and potentially on Wednesday. It's not confirmed yet. So you guys have plenty of time for questions. And I could stay later too. I just want to make sure that we get through what I actually planned, okay? All right, so that's one thing, right? That you're being graded on. We need to address the prompt. We need to answer the actual question they're giving us. Okay, so the other thing that is worth more points is each one of these is 3 points, right? 3, 3, and 3. So this is what we really want to be focused on. So grammar, spelling, and punctuation in my book is a really easy way to get all 3 points for that one. So you want to make sure that you are using proper grammar, right? We're not using run-on sentences. We're not using, we're obviously capitalizing things that need to be capitalized, like basic things like that. Absolutely. We're indenting paragraphs. So basic things like that, absolutely no question have to be done, right? Those are really easy points that you can get, even if the structure of your essay is lacking for any reason. If you are using proper grammar and spelling and punctuation, you're going to get 3 points, right? So those are easy points that you do not want to miss out on. Even if you run out of time in an essay, you can still get the full 3 points for grammar, spelling, and punctuation. So try not to be careless. I know that you guys are writing quickly, so it's easy to miss things like periods or something like that. But if you have a habit of writing correctly, grammatically, it shouldn't be a problem on test day. And I'll go over really basic sentence structure things with you guys just as a quick review. The other thing is you're controlling what you're writing, right? So if you're not sure if you should use a semicolon or something like that, or a comma, restructure your sentence, say what you're trying to say in a different way such that you're sure of the grammar, right? Because you don't want them to take points away. And yeah, we can absolutely go over transition words. So transition words will fall into this part. This is where this could be graded on. So the other thing that they're grading you on is, oh, and here. So it's like double, it'll go here and here basically. So if your essay is well organized, you're using transition words. Because transition words signify that you're switching from one idea to the next idea to the next idea. It's kind of like a little hint to the reader. Instead of just like taking a sharp turn, you're taking like a slight turn and then you make the full turn, right? You're suggesting to your reader what's about to come, like you're feeding them your thought process basically. So that's going to help your organization. Transition words are things like however, there are things like despite, there are things like nevertheless, there are things like significantly. Any one of these can be transition words. And we can review that and make a list when we get into the note-taking aspect. Okay. The other thing is use of advanced vocabulary words. So this is another thing that I would kind of come in prepared for. Try to have the words that you're going to use in your mind before you walk on into test day, right? So you can think of words that are broad that could be used to describe a lot of things. Ultimately, this is going to be a descriptive essay, so I would pick sort of strong adjectives that you can sort of weave into any essay. And I would maybe have like 7 words in mind, 8 words, something like that, just in case you can't think of a way to use one word, you have backup. Does that make sense? Okay. Let's see. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the structure. what I said verbally. I just want to make sure that I get it down on paper. And then we'll talk about some grammar things, and then we'll do transition words, and then we'll try to do like figurative language and literary devices. Okay, let me take a quick look at the chat to see all the questions that you guys have thrown at me. Do you use transition words in each paragraph or between like paragraph 1 and 2? Both. So usually you definitely should use transition words throughout your paragraphs because you're kind of developing ideas. You could also use them between paragraphs. Between paragraphs, it's a little bit like you would use words like significantly or additionally, in addition, things like that, because each body paragraph is kind of building on one big thing. I would say they're not as necessary between paragraphs, but you should definitely use them within paragraphs. But you could use them both ways, right? Neither is wrong. Do we state all our reasons in the introduction? Okay, we're gonna go over what you put in which paragraph now. Transition words are still needed because you can see that they directly grade you guys on transition words. So even if you are telling a story, there's still transitions in your story, right? Things are still changing. I've recently moved here, know barely anything about New York City. Okay, so you should try to practice an essay about New York City. You can incorporate the fact that you moved here into your feelings about New York City. So it can still be a personal narrative essay that is applicable to your life and honest and true. And you can just talk about your first impressions of the city and frame it like that, right? So the essay should be kind of true to how you feel, but there are ways to make sure that you're hitting the points that they want along with true to what you feel. Does that make sense? Should I start with a transition? No, we do want to start with a hook, which I'm going to talk about right now. But I wouldn't really start with a transition, but you do want to start with some sort of a hook. Do you skip lines between paragraphs? You don't have to. You don't have to skip lines or make it double spaced, especially since a lot of you are concerned about space in general. So you don't have to skip lines. That's not a grammar thing at all. Absolutely. For example is another example of a transition word. For example, for instance, you should definitely use that. Some people are asking me about specific prompts. There's not really a right or wrong answer, right? You can answer the prompt any way that you want as long as you're answering the prompt and you're using figurative language. Okay, so I think that I answered most of the questions that were repeating. Let me try to let's try to start the note-taking aspect. Okay. All right, so like I said, you should start your essay with an introduction. So that's the first thing that we're going to write down. Let me just title this. So like I just verbally mentioned, we want to begin with a hook. So when we say hook, that can mean so many things, right? And a lot of students are like, well, can you give me an example, blah, blah, blah. So let's think of some ways that you guys can definitely have like on the top of your head, so you're not kind of lost. Because I know that's usually my hardest part when I start writing an essay. I'm like, okay, where do I start? What do I say? Okay, so number one is we want to start with a hook. So let's give us some thoughts of what a hook can be. So somebody in the chat said start with a question. That's a great, you can definitely start with a question. That's not my go-to, but you can. As long as it's a rhetorical question that grabs the reader's attention, gets them interested, absolutely, you can start with a question. Another thing that you can do is you can use a literary device right away. So we didn't review the literary devices yet, but it's my goal to do so either today or tomorrow. So if we start with a literary device, one example of that can be onomatopoeia, which is like a sound. So we can say something like boom or bang or something like that. So for example, boom or bang or kaboom, whatever you want it to be, right? Imagine you are talking about New York City. You can absolutely do a bang or kaboom and talk about how loud the city is or how you hear whatever it is that you hear outside of your New York City window and take that approach to begin, for example. Another thing that you can do is you can start with a quote. So somebody in the chat said like a universal statement, something like that. You can absolutely start with something like that. If there's a quote from even a song, especially like if you think about New York City, like you do something like New York City State of Mind, or there's so much music that comes to mind that discusses New York City, you can absolutely use something like that and take that approach to begin as well. And then my last sort of hint that a lot of you guys are putting here is descriptive language, absolutely. So what do we mean by descriptive language? Anything that uses the 5 senses. And I'm going to take more notes with you guys on descriptive language because that's like really a big way to get points on this test. They like that kind of stuff. So anything that invokes the 5 senses. So when you're describing something, you want to talk about how it feels, how it smells, how it looks, every sense that you can think of. Does that make sense? Be as like descriptive as possible, how it sounds, everything like that. Invokes the 5 senses. With this, it can also invoke imagery. And in order to do that, you want to use lots of adjectives. So all of these, I just gave you guys 4 different options that would be acceptable hooks. A lot of people some people like the question, some people don't like the question. You have to realize that some part of writing an essay will always be subjective. So a lot of people will tell you like different things. I think the safest thing is using a literary device or using descriptive language. But really you won't get marked down for using a quote or a question mark. As long as you are making an effort to use some sort of hook, they will give you credit for that. And as long as it's not something that's like you're just doing it to do it, it has to obviously be relevant to the essay topic and it has to like match with what you're saying. It can't just be like a random question like, do you like ice cream? And then you go into your like New York City essay. Does that make sense? So you can't just do it to check off the box that you did it. It has to be relevant and kind of meshed within the framework of what you're writing. Okay, so those are all options in terms of what to start with. And then what else goes into your introduction? Like we mentioned before, we want to put in a thesis. So within a thesis statement, we definitely want to sort of answer the question that we want to. So for example, if they tell us like, how did New York City shape you? Let's say something like that. Sorry, guys. Let's say we're sticking on the New York City prompt. So if I was going to think of a thesis from the top of my head, we could say something like this. We can say growing up in New York City has helped shape my core values because I learned about diversity and I was exposed to a great public school education. These qualities are important because, and then you would list 3 reasons why they are important. So let's talk about why this is a good, an acceptable thesis statement. First of all, we're directly answering the prompt, right? They're saying, why or how did growing up in New York City shape you? I'm directly restating the prompt. I'm saying, this city shaped me in this way, right? I'm directly giving them an answer to the question that they're posing. Okay, so now I mentioned 2 important things. I mentioned diversity here, and I mentioned public school education. So these are kind of like my pillars, right? Those are going to be the pillars of my essay, and every single reason of why I say this is important, I'm going to be breaking those pillars down, right? I'm going to be explaining them further. I'm going to be saying, why are those important to who I am? Why does that matter? Blah, 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 blah. So you can now take this essay in 2 directions. You can either decide not to go so extra and say why these qualities are important, and you can just talk about 1 body paragraph about why diversity is important, another body paragraph about why public school education is important. And if you wanted to make it 3 body paragraphs, you could also add some third thing here. So that could be one way that you structure your essay. A second way that you can structure your essay is take this approach that I was thinking and explain why these qualities are important and give 3 reasons why they're important, and then structure your essay that way. Make each body paragraph about 1 reason why it's important. And then you always go back to how that is important. So you could say, because culture is important to me, right? And I live in a metropolis and blah, 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 blah. So then you can explore diversity. You can explore how, because you had public school education, you saw diversity there, why that's important to you, what you get out of learning about different cultures, what you get out of having friends that are all different sort of races and ethnicities, and all that kind of stuff. And then the next reason can be whatever else you think of. Does that make sense? Okay, you can absolutely use stories too. So story is a literary device in and of itself. So if I want a story can be a way to support your topic sentence. So instead of just telling them how diversity is good, you can tell a story about how you and your best friends are all different races, let's say, and ethnicities, and how like you were at your friend's house and you tried some sort of cultural food and you use all that language, and you can tell a narrative story about that. And that narrative story is your way to support your point. Does that make sense? Okay, so that is what we mean by a thesis statement. So all of this is going in the introduction. So the next big chunk of your essay is the body paragraph. So that's what we're going to focus on next. Okay, so each body paragraph is going to open with a topic sentence. So that's important for structure. And the goal of the topic sentence is to support your thesis. So you're not saying some random thing, you're not introducing a brand new idea, you're just building. So in your topic sentence, your goal is to support your thesis. Now, there's many different ways that you can support your thesis. Like we talked about, this is where you would use examples. So all the things that go in here are examples, are details. A story can be used here / narrative to support whatever point you're trying to make. You want to use figurative language here. You want to be as descriptive as possible and use imagery. You want to use transition words here. And here is where you would kind of pull out all your techniques of showing rather than telling and all that kind of stuff. So this is really the crux of like where you can show your sort of talents with writing. This is where you can use your imagination, you can use similes, you can use metaphors, you can use all the literary devices, alliteration, onomatopoeia, whatever you want. This is where you can be as creative as possible. That's really is the body of your essay. And then the last part is your conclusion. Your conclusion does not need to be long at all. You just need to restate your thesis. And usually what I tell my students is you want to restate your thesis. And you want to tell everybody of why this is significant. So at the end of your essay, you want to remind everybody of why this is important. So you want to tell everybody, okay, so New York City is important to me, blah, 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 blah. This is how I have my culture. At the end of the day, who cares, right? You want to always add in a supporting line of this is who cares. This is why it matters. Does that make sense to everybody? So elevate the experience, really show them or tell them like, this is why it's important. Okay, questions about general structure?
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, when I was in person on a couple weeks ago, Joya taught me when we were doing the structure for the essay. She said she put only 3 bodies and a conclusion. So is that fine?
I mean, you can't really go into a body paragraph. You need to have some sort of introduction.
Okay.
Olga, I just want to chime in really quickly, just because there was a very small handful of families. I wanted to know if you can do an extension. I'm sorry to ask you last minute, but I want to know if you're able to extend the class today.
Until when?
30 minutes?
Yeah, sure, no problem.
Good. Do you have more than 30 minutes?
We can do until 9 if people want. Would that be too long?
Is that okay? Yeah, well, you're supposed to end when? 8 o'clock?
Yeah, we were supposed to end at 8.
I think 9 would be great because I want you to be able to answer any questions. The students are testing this week and I just don't want there to be any unnecessary stress. So let's do, everyone, we're going to do an extension for an extra hour. This way everyone has the opportunity to extend. Okay. And just okay, just be really mindful of the chat box, Olga, please. If you're able to, just adjust the settings so they can just communicate with you, please.
Yeah, I already did that.
Yeah, do adjustment with the settings. And then I'm so sorry, before you have any questions, please type your questions in the chat. It would be better just to keep everyone on mute, type questions in the chat. It's much more organized that way. All right, so are we okay with that? So whoever has questions, please type questions into the chat. And Olga has a special setting on the chat where she sees whatever you're writing. It goes straight to her. So I just want to remind you to do that. And then Olga, outside of that, are we okay, Olga? We're just going to keep everyone on mute. Okay. I'm just going to do the setting. Are you able to do that for me, Olga? I want to make sure that everyone is very structured. Okay.
Okay.
Are we all set? All right. Perfect. That's what I want to see. Okay. So I think we're good from here. So Olga, can you please type in the chat right now? This class will extend through 9 o'clock. So everyone who's in the group is going to have the option to, ask any questions they have. So if you could just prepare your parents as well, we're going to have an optional extension of this class and this group so that you can go through any questions that you have. Keep that in mind for today. And Olga, if you do have the opportunity to extend the class, I think that would be wonderful. So all the students can have a longer class. In terms of communicating, I would like everyone to type questions into the chat. So Olga, please just if you can just put the participants and keep them on mute. This way everyone can type questions in the chat. So can you do that setting for me, please?
Yeah, it's done.
All right, so everyone, you can type questions into Olga's chat box. It'll go straight to her. And number one. Number two, we're going to keep the class going through 9 o'clock for today. All right, so that should work really well. Good. Olga, you have the questions. Oh, can you put those essay prompts up again? I want to make sure everyone has a chance to screenshot that if they need to. That's exactly what I want. Everyone, please review, okay? Olga, do you have any questions before I exit out?
No, I think we're good.
All right, great. We'll keep going today, 9 p.m. Tomorrow is the stress reduction webinar, right? Is that correct?
Yes.
Am I remembering correctly? So let's keep that. And that's also a 6 to 8. I think if you are available, Olga, are you okay tomorrow to do a little bit of an extension? Is that okay?
Yeah, most likely that should be fine. I'll let you know tonight, but most likely it should be fine.
Everyone, let's plan for tomorrow's class also extending. I just want to get the maximum additional time that we can so that everyone can answer any questions they have. All right, this is great. So Olga, today 6, everyone until 9. If you need to take a break, you can do that. But just remember, that's going to be the goal we're going through. Okay. All right, everyone, keep going. All right. Thank you, Olga. Thanks for maintaining the proper settings. Okay, thank you. Bye.
Okay, guys. All right, so new plan, we're gonna go until 9, which is great because you guys had a bunch of questions for me in the beginning that I said we'd save to the end anyways. So now Ms. Francis gave us the time to do that. Okay, so let's keep it going. So does anybody have questions that are specific to the structure that I just reviewed? You guys should now be comfortable with just understanding the bare bones of the essay, right? You should be comfortable with understanding that we need to have an introduction. We're starting with a hook. We want to get our readers interested. I gave you guys 4 examples of how we can begin with a hook. So you guys should kind of go in ready, right? You should have multiple options in your head. You shouldn't kind of read the prompt and be stuck. Additionally, we went over an example of a thesis statement that really gives your essay the framework. Okay, so after you have your introduction, then we have your body paragraph. So that's really the body of your essay. That's where we get to use all of the like lovely tools in our toolbox that we're learning. That's where you guys can use your figurative language, your similes, your analogies, your transition words, your showing rather than telling. That's where you're going to put all of these things that we're teaching you, that we're putting in your toolbox. That's where you get to use all those things. And then conclusion, you should spend the least time there. It can be up to 2-3 sentences. All you have to do is restate your thesis and then remind the readers of why everything that you're saying is significant. Okay. All right, so where do we go from here? So let's talk a little bit about grammar aspects. And then let's review showing rather than telling and using sensory details and all that kind of stuff. So I want to make sure that we have a brief grammar review because you get graded on grammar and it's a really easy way to make points, to get all those points in that part of the rubric. So let's do a grammar review and then we'll kind of go back to all those tools in your toolbox like transition words and figurative language and do note taking on all those things. So you guys have examples of all those. Okay, so let's call this Hunter grammar review. Okay, so one thing that is going to make your essay sort of stand out is if you are varying sentence structure. So that's really important for you guys to add a sort of extra pizzazz to your essay. If you're using a lot of short sentences that are just like, I like New York, I am a student in New York. New York has beautiful skyscrapers. All of those sentences rather are very short and choppy. So one strategy that we recommend is varying the sentence structure. Having one sentence that's nice and long, complex, has a dependent clause, an independent clause, and then having a short sentence after that. And then maybe having 2 sentences that are combined with a transition word or with a semicolon and showing that you're kind of familiar with different types of sentence structures is going to elevate your essay and give you the highest grade possible. Now, the reason I'm putting that in the grammar review is because if we're varying our sentence structure, we have to be really careful with our punctuation. So you don't want to vary your sentence structure and do that with an incorrect punctuation, because then you'll be penalized for wrong grammar. So I just want to make sure that we're comfortable with writing complex sentences so that can add to your essay grade without retracting from it in case you guys are not sure of the grammar. So let's quickly review that. So this technique is called varying sentence structure. And one way that we can do that is we can use commas plus fanboys. So fanboys is an acronym that you guys may have heard of. It stands for and, nor, but, or, yet, or so. Okay, so for example, we can say something like, let me think of an example. So we could say something like New York City is a diverse place. And then we can say something like, let me think of a better example. Okay, so right now we have two full sentences that are completely grammatically correct. The first sentence says there are many aspects to love about New York City. And then the second sentence says my favorite aspect is the diversity of food and people. So if we combine this sentence, these two sentences, we are doing two things. First of all, each one of these fanboys has a meaning, right? So these are technically transition words in and of itself. Any of these that we use, we are giving the author an extra, the reader an extra sort of semblance of what I'm trying to say, how I'm trying to bridge the two sentences, right? So that's one reason why you would want to vary your sentence structure, because you're adding an extra meaning, you're adding a transition word. A second reason is because you're varying your sentence structure. So most of the sentences that you guys are going to write are going to be simple subject predicate sentences. So if every once in a while you have the opportunity to combine the two, that's going to diversify your essay and benefit you. Okay, so how would we do that? What's one example? So really there's many different ways to be creative with this, but one way is to say something like, there are many aspects to love about New York City, but my favorite is the diversity of food and people. So by adding the but here, we're giving the author, the reader, this idea that we're actually introducing contrast here. So that's the importance of using fanboys, that you can give the reader a little bit of extra what you're trying to say. And then the other thing that I really want you guys to pay attention to is look at the grammar, right? Look at the way that I'm actually combining this. I'm putting a comma and a fanboy. That's really, really important. You cannot just use this randomly. This would be wrong if you didn't put a comma there. Does that make sense? So you don't want to be penalized for grammar here. So be comfortable with this strategy, comma plus fanboy. That's the grammatically correct way to combine two completely independent clauses. A second option that you guys have if you want to combine two clauses is to use a semicolon. So the way that you would use a semicolon is the same way that you would use a period, but you would keep everything lowercase. So you would put, it would be this exact sentence, but instead of the period and new letter, you would just put a semicolon, and I can show you what that would look like. You would get rid of this, you would get rid of this period, and you would get rid of this capital. You would put a semicolon here, and this would just be lowercase. And that's correct as well. Okay, so in this, we have two positives, right? One is we're diversifying our sentence structure, which is just going to elevate our essay. And two, we just ran over some grammar review. Okay, what else is important with grammar? It's really important that when you write, you use parallel sentence structure. Okay, so what do I mean by parallel sentence structure? So let me give you guys an example of a sentence, and then I want you guys to tell me in the chat what's wrong with the sentence. So here's an example of a sentence. I love to go swimming, jogging, okay, so here's a sentence. I want you guys to tell me in the chat if this is acceptable or if there's a mistake. And if there's a mistake, what would you correct? Okay, so we have a lot of good explanations in the chat. The main thing that we're going for here is parallel structure. So parallel structure is kind of what it sounds like. If you think about everything being parallel, it's almost like everything being similar, right? So here, I love to go swimming, to go jogging, right? I don't need to restate the to go because it's almost like distributive property in math. This to go applies to this verb and it applies to this verb. But then all of a sudden, I love to go swimming. That makes sense. I love to go jogging. That makes sense. I love to go also going to the mall. Doesn't make sense. So if we wanted to correct it, we would say, I like to go swimming, jogging, and to the mall. Or the whole to the mall thing is kind of weird. So I would just say, I like to go swimming and jogging. And then if I wanted to say going to the mall, that would be a new sentence. Because these words, these ing words, you see how they match? So that's what I mean by parallel structure. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, let me give you guys another example just to make sure that we get it. Okay, tell me if this sentence is correct, if it's not correct, and how I would fix it. Yeah, somebody fixed this. This is a good example of how to fix it. Somebody said this could be, I like to go swimming, jogging, and shopping at the mall. That's a good way to fix it. And notice how everything matches, right? ing here, ing here, ing here. We have parallel structure. Yeah, exactly. So the problem here is I will teach is written in one way, and then the next verb is written in an ing way. So this and this do not match. So I should either say tonight I will be teaching essay tips and watching Netflix, or tonight I will teach essay tips and watch Netflix, right? You have different ways that you can fix it, and it doesn't matter which way that you choose. The matter is that they have to match. So either this has to be teaching and watching, or I have to say I will teach essay tips and I will watch Netflix. So that's what I mean by parallel structure. Things have to match in your writing. Does that make sense? Are people more clear on parallel structure? Or are we still kind of confused? Okay, good. All right, perfect. Okay, so let's see what else we want to cover. The next thing that I would argue that's important in grammar is make sure that you don't shift tenses. So I find that because this is a narrative, usually you're writing kind of like from first point of view, and you're writing like a story of what's happening as it's happening, but make sure that you're not switching tenses. Like you're randomly going into past tense, then into future tense, into past tense again. So just make sure that there's consistency in that. You can do a flashback as long as it's obvious that it's a flashback. I mean, like in the same sentence, don't make it like something was yesterday and then you're doing something at the same time. You know what I mean? So any obvious tense shifts, but flashbacks, absolutely. If you're doing a flashback, that would be in past tense. Awkward sentence structure. So somebody asked what that means. Something could be awkward sentence structure if it's a really wordy sentence, like if it's very, very long. Another thing that could be awkward sentence structure is if you're not being parallel. Anything that's basically like off. Does that make sense? You don't want to be too wordy. So like I taught you guys how to use a semicolon. This doesn't mean that you can have 7 sentences all connected by semicolons. That would be awkward sentence structure. You want things to be natural. The longest that you should do is 2 sentences with 1 semicolon in a row. You shouldn't do like more than that. Okay, so that's the grammar aspect. Let's move on to some techniques that I want to review with you guys. I want to review basically vivid writing and how we would do that. And then I want to review figurative language and literary devices with you guys, and then transition words. So let's try to get through all of that in the next hour, as long as and showing and not telling. And then hopefully we have about like 40 minutes at the end, because I know you guys have a bunch of questions for me. And sure, I can go over fanboys again. Fanboys is an acronym. It's right here on the board. It stands for and, nor, but, or, yet, or so. And I tried to like write it going this way. So for, and, nor, but, or, yet, or so. And I can keep this up here for just a second for you guys to have the notes. And again, you guys can email me at the end of class and I will send you the notes from today. I'm gonna be right back. I just need to grab my charger. Okay, so let's review vivid writing. That's next up. And everybody, I just want to reiterate again, we're extending today until 9 p.m. and tomorrow as well. Somebody's asking me to go back to the notes. Is it this page that you need? All right, so let's move on to vivid writing. So when I talk about vivid writing, it's really important for you guys to understand what we mean by that. So the biggest technique for vivid writing is showing rather than telling. So that's what I want to review with you guys first, and then I'll show you techniques of how we can do that. Okay, so how do we show instead of telling? So the main thing with showing instead of telling is we want to create the sense of a setting, right? So instead of telling somebody that it was winter, or instead of telling somebody that we're inside my apartment, you can use descriptive language to show them where you're located without directly saying it. So let me give you an example of how we could incorporate that. So number one is create the sense of a setting. So instead of saying something like, it was autumn, the weather was getting cold. So this is an okay sentence, right? Notice what I'm doing. I'm using a semicolon just to review with you guys the way that we use that. So I'm varying my sentence structure, and grammatically it's correct. And the problem here is that I'm just telling the reader what's going on. I'm telling the reader the season, and I'm telling the reader that it's getting cold. So how can we elevate this? And how can I say the same things without directly saying them? So how can I show instead of telling? So here will be a good example. The dry kaleidoscope made up of shades of orange, red, green, red and green, let's say, crunched underneath my feet as I pulled my coat collar over my neck. Okay, so let's think about what I did here. So I said the dry kaleidoscope. So kaleidoscope is an example of a good vocabulary word that you guys can use. A kaleidoscope, you can Google it. It's like a toy that we used to have back in the day. And like you look inside of it and it's like a bunch of different colors and shapes basically. So basically I'm invoking this image of something really, really colorful and beautiful and all of these tones by saying kaleidoscope. And I'm also checking off the vocabulary box that we went over, right? You want to use vocabulary words. So that's one thing that I did. Next, I'm being really, really descriptive, right? So I'm describing the kaleidoscope, what kind of kaleidoscope, it's dry. And overall, I'm creating a whole metaphor because there's no real kaleidoscope. I'm comparing the leaves to a kaleidoscope. So on top of that, I have figurative language going on here, right? Subliminally. Then I'm describing the leaves. I'm calling them orange, red, and green. And you guys can do even better than me. Instead of saying orange, red, and green, we could take this further. We could use another word like maroon. We can instead invoke more imagery and similes. Instead of directly saying orange, red, and green, I can say shades of a bright orange fruit and a bright red rose and a bright green cactus. Like you can go on and on with this, right? You don't want to overdo it too much, but you do want to use as many devices as possible. And then crunched is describing the way that it sounded like underneath my feet. And this part I think is really important as I pulled my coat collar over my neck. So what am I trying to explain? Instead of saying that I was cold, I'm showing the reader that I'm cold by my action, right? Because I'm pulling my jacket over my coat, that is describing that I'm cold. Does that make sense? Rather than directly saying it. So this is exactly what we mean when I say show rather than tell. This elevates your essay to a point where it feels like your reader is there with you. It feels like when you're reading a really, really good book and you feel like you're there with the character, that's the kinds of feelings that we're trying to invoke in this essay. And that's how we can do that using these exact techniques. Okay, so how else can we do that? Show rather than tell is a huge way. Another way that we can do that is we can use dialogue. So instead of saying something like, if you're telling a narrative story, instead of saying like, I was mad at my friend, you can create the dialogue of your conversation, show that you're upset, use things like I shouted or I exclaimed, because words like that are describing your feeling, your tone, your intonation of how you said something in your dialogue and giving the reader an extra understanding of that conversation of what's going on. Another thing is to describe actions. So usually I find that students are really good at using adjectives, but don't forget that you can also use adverbs. Does that make sense? So you can also describe the verbs. So you don't only want to describe all the nouns you're using, you could also describe the verbs, the actual actions. So I want to make sure that you guys remember that. And then finally, you want to use strong details. And this just goes back to the imagery, which I invoked in that example that I just gave you guys up here. So in order to get really good at showing rather than telling, we have to get comfortable with sensory details, with how we would vividly write about each one of our senses, how we would use our sight, our touch, our sound, our taste, our smell to our advantage. So that's the next thing that I want to focus on with you guys, because that's what you're going to do most of the time in order to be descriptive. So let's make a table for ourselves and review sensory details and the 5 senses and how I'm going to give you guys an example of how I would invoke each sense. Yeah, people need the notes, so I'm just going to keep this up for a minute, and then we'll move on to the sensory details. So somebody's asking me in the chat about if your handwriting isn't good. You're not directly going to get points off, but if the reader can't understand what you're saying, then in that case, you would get points off. But they're not going to take away points just because your handwriting isn't perfect. But obviously, you want to be as neat as possible just to save yourself space. And additionally, in order to make sure that the person can read what you're writing, otherwise you won't get any credit for it. You guys get 2 pages for the essay. If your handwriting is neat and big, that's fine. Okay, are you guys okay with the notes? Can I move on? All right, perfect. All right, so let's review sensory details. So again, just to be clear of what I mean by sensory details, when we talk about sensory details, we are referring to our 5 senses. And those 5 senses are going to be sight, touch, sound, taste, and smell. Okay, so let's create a table for ourselves. So type, this is going to be a vague sentence, which we don't want to emulate, but I'm going to show you guys just for comparison purposes. And then I'm going to show you guys a vivid sentence, which is every sentence that we should aim for to write on this test. And this is what I'm going to highlight. This is what I want you guys to focus on this column. Okay, so let's start with sight, right? That's an easy one, what something looks like. So just to define sight, again, that's what something looks like. We're describing something's appearance. So we should think about appearance. Some things that we can see include color and shape. Those are 2 really obvious things that we can do when we are describing something in terms of what something looks like. So if I wanted to write a really vague sentence, I can say the sky was blue, right? Very basic sentence. I'm describing what the sky is looking like. Okay, so how can we elevate the sentence? I could say the sky was a bright blue, like the color, let's say, that stains your teeth after enjoying a blueberry slushie. Okay, so what did I do in this sentence that elevates it, right? So first, the most basic thing that you can do is you can use adjectives. So instead of just calling it blue, I described the kind of blue. So I said bright blue. So that's one really basic step that everybody can take, right? Add an extra descriptive. What kind of blue? Light blue, bright blue, anything else that you can think of. And then the next thing that I did that elevated this was I added a comparison. So this word right here, I compared the color of the sky to the color of something else that's blue. And because I use the word like or as, this is called a simile. Yeah, perfect. People are putting it in the chat. And then I described it. And you can put any simile that you want. This is the place where you guys can get creative. This is the first thing that came to my mind, so that's what I wrote. So this is one way that you guys can elevate your language. You can add a simile. And again, this isn't to say that every single sentence in your essay is going to be like this, right? Because then that would be a bunch of nonsense and overdoing it. You can't have an essay without any basic sentences. Of course, you need to have simple sentences. But the important part that I'm trying to emphasize is they can't all be simple sentences. You want to be descriptive, you want to be imaginative, you want to be creative. Everyone's essay is going to have simple sentences, right? That's how everybody speaks, but you need something that's going to make your essay stand out. And this is how we accomplish that, by using showing rather than telling, by using words like kaleidoscope, by doing something different, by adding a simile or a comparison. And this is one way that we can do that. Thinking about the 5 senses is a really good way to put your mind in a descriptive atmosphere to know what you should say or how different ways that you can describe something. Okay, so we did sight. What should we do next? Let's do touch next. So when we think about touch, the main thing here is what something feels like. So we can think about texture / feeling. So a really basic example will be the rock was rough. And now let's add some spice to it. The coarse rock was rough against my palm. It felt as if it was coated in sandpaper. So again, we have multiple things going on here, and I'm just being repetitive so you guys really get comfortable with doing this. So you hear my voice when you're writing and you're like, did I put in an extra adjective? Did I use one comparison? Did I vary my sentence structure and use a semicolon? That's exactly what we did here. Instead of just saying the rock, I added one simple word, the coarse rock. That's already elevating you 1 point. Then I described it further. Was rough where? Where did it feel rough? Against my palm. And this is a little bit of showing rather than telling too, because you're making now the reader imagine that you're holding the rock, right? You're adding a little bit dimension to it instead of just making the thing about the rock too. And this is a narrative, so you want to do that as much as you can. And then we have a semicolon, which we discussed. It felt as if it was coated in sandpaper, and now it's a comparison looking like or using like or as. So we have another simile here. Okay, the next one, let's do sound. And that's pretty self-explanatory what something sounds like. So we can say the music sounded nice. And now let's try to invoke showing rather than telling. So instead of just telling the reader the music sounded nice, we can show the reader that the music sounded nice based on events that are happening, right? So instead of saying the music sounded nice, we can say from the very first jazzy note, the whole room couldn't help but sway to the irresistible beat. So instead of telling the reader that the music sounded nice, I'm showing them by the actions of the whole audience, right? So if the whole audience is getting up and dancing and they can't help but sway, that obviously means that the music is sounding good. That obviously means that it's like a vibe, a jam. Everybody can't help but dance. And again, notice that I'm not even directly saying the word dance. I'm not saying the room was dancing, the audience was dancing. I'm describing the sway to the irresistible beat. Does that make sense? So we have layers and layers here of showing rather than telling. So it doesn't always have to be this very like extra over the top comparison. A showing rather than telling can just be literally showing instead of telling them. Does that make sense? And that doesn't make your essay sound too like fluffy and fake either. Because I know some students sometimes complain that if you make every single sentence a simile, absolutely, that sounds a little bit extra and much. It sounds like you're doing it on purpose. We want to make sure that it sounds natural, which is where showing rather than telling comes in. It doesn't always have to be a figurative language. But I do want to encourage you guys to see that even in this sentence, I'm using so many adjectives. So instead of just saying note, I'm describing the note, jazzy note. Instead of just saying beat, I'm describing the beat, the irresistible beat. So adjectives are really, really important in showing rather than telling and in invoking imagery, both adjectives and adverbs. Okay, anybody have any questions so far? Okay, can I switch this page so we can do the last two? Okay, so people are still writing, so I'm gonna keep this open for another minute or two, and then we'll switch to the last two. And we're gonna go and do taste and smell. So somebody asked a good question. How do you show, not tell, but without figurative language? So this is an example where I didn't really use figurative language, but I'm showing rather than telling. You, instead of saying outright what's going on, you describe the events. Rather than saying dance, you say sway to the irresistible beat. Rather than say the music sounded nice, you show an action that implies that the music sounds nice. So it's about an implication game. And again, while you guys are copying notes, I want to remind everybody about the extension until 9 p.m., both today and tomorrow. So somebody's asking how many sentences in one paragraph should be like this. That's kind of a hard question to answer, hard to put a specific number on it. Again, we want it to be natural. I will say that at least 2 to 3 of your 5 to 6 sentences should be like this in each body paragraph. We can absolutely take a break when we're halfway through. I want to finish the sensory details, and then I can give you guys like a 5-minute break to reconvene since we have the extension, okay? Each body paragraph, I will say, should be 5 to 6 sentences. There is some variety there because if you're using a lot of semicolons, technically each one of those is like 2 sentences. So you just want to make sure that you're supporting your thesis and your topic sentence. But I would say at least 5 sentences in the body paragraphs. Okay, can I switch? Okay, so let's switch and do the last 2. Okay, so the last 2 that we have are taste and then smell. Okay, so let's think of a vague basic sentence with taste. We can say the candy was sour. And now how can we elevate this? So we can say my taste buds recoiled from the sudden tartness drawing my lips up in a pucker. Okay, so what am I doing here? So first of all, I'm using personification, right? Your taste buds don't literally recoil. A recoil is something that a person can do or an insect, something that's alive. Taste buds are inanimate. They don't literally recoil. So what we're doing here is we're using personification. We're also using vocab words. Recoiled is a good vocab word to use. Tartness is a good vocab word to use. And the third thing that we're doing is we're showing rather than telling, because I'm not telling the reader that the candy was sour, but if you guys read the sentence and analyzed it, you would still understand that the candy was sour. It says drawing my lips up in a pucker. So you're describing the way that your face would react if you have something really sour in your mouth and you kind of like squint and your lips pucker, and that whole feeling is going to show your audience that the candy that you put in your mouth was sour without directly telling them. So we have figurative language personification. And don't worry if you're confused about the personification, because when you guys come back from the break, I'm going to do a whole rundown about figurative language and we'll talk about personification. But we have figurative language, we have good vocab words, and we have showing rather than telling. So you guys can see that you can diversify this in any way that you want. Each sentence doesn't have to have all 3 or all 4, but you can vary and play this game where in one sentence you show rather than tell, in another sentence you use imagery, in a third sentence you use simile or metaphor, and a fourth one you can use personification, and then you can have 1 or 2 simple sentences. And in that way you have a really nice structured paragraph with a topic sentence, with sentence diversity, with good vocabulary, and with all of these different tools that I'm adding into your toolbox. Okay, and then the last one, let's think of a basic sentence with smell. We can just say something like, I smell something weird. And now let's elevate that. The odor attacked my nostrils. It was a disgusting mix of rotten eggs wet dog, and dirty diapers. Okay, so let's talk about what I did here. So first, we have another example of personification, right? Because the way something smells can't literally attack your nostrils. So I'm personifying smell. So I'm saying the odor attacked my nostrils, and that's already kind of showing rather than telling. I'm describing how I'm being kind of overtaken by this like smell. Okay, how about next? Next, I say it was a disgusting mix. So disgusting is a good adjective to write. And then I'm using examples, which we haven't used in all of these that I've given you so far. But here I'm using examples: rotten eggs, wet diapers, wet dogs, dirty diapers, right? So all of these are examples that are invoking, creating an image in my mind of what something smells like. Does that make sense? Absolutely. Somebody's suggesting we can use horrendous. Somebody's suggesting we can use the word rancid. All of those are good, good adjectives, good vocab words that you guys can use, even better than my example. Perfect. And the other thing that potent, pungent, yeah, all good examples. The other thing that I want to focus on is notice that whenever we have a list, remember how when we did the grammar, we reviewed parallel structure. So whenever you have a list, you should think about that grammar review that we just went over with parallel structure. And here, everything is parallel, and you'll also notice that everything is plural, right? So I'm creating consistency. So when we think about parallelity, you want it to be parallel and you want to stay consistent. So if one thing is plural, it's nice that everything is plural. You're just making sure that everything is consistent. Okay, so overall, if I wanted to summarize how we use vivid language, we want to use lots of adjectives. We want to use figurative language. We want to show rather than tell, and we want to give examples. So those are sort of the guidelines that you are going to think about when we're thinking about how do we use vivid writing. So let's just write that down. So we have template for vivid writing. And these are the 4 techniques that you guys saw me doing over and over and over again. So 1 is adjectives plus adverbs. 2 is figurative language. 3 is show rather than tell. And then 4 is use examples. So that's kind of the summary. And then you guys have a bunch of examples of the way that we did that. All right, so any questions specific to what we have covered so far? Okay, and then we're about halfway through until the 9 p.m. session. So I want to give you guys a 5-minute break. Let's try to be back within 5 minutes, 7:33, 7:35, we'll keep going. And when we keep going, I want to review transition words with you guys and figurative language. So those are the next 2 things that we want to focus on. I think that'll take us about 30, 40 minutes, and then that should still leave like 30, 40 minutes for you guys to ask me any questions that you guys have. And again, reminder that both today and tomorrow is extended until 9. So you guys can go ahead and go on break. And then if you're not on break, you can still chat me questions and I can answer them directly through the chat for now. But you guys can go on break and we'll start again at like 34, 35. All right, is everybody ready? Are you guys back from break? So during the break, I answered any questions that you guys had in the chat. I just direct messaged it back to the students that asked me. And I also checked my email and I sent a bunch of people the notes from the weekend that asked for it. So whoever asked me, you guys should, you should see an email now. Okay, so let's keep going. I want to go over literary devices and figurative language. And make sure that you guys are comfortable with those so you can apply those in your essay. And then I want to review transition words. Yeah, a lot of people are asking for the notes, so I can't, because this webinar was open to all the students at Kweller that are taking a Hunter class, I don't have a class list, right? So if you need the notes, you have to email me after class and I will respond.
Olga, I don't want to give you unnecessary stress. Okay. I will handle it. Olga, please don't put your email because it's going to be too many students requesting. Send it to me after class. Send me everything over the past few days in one email. I'm going to email it out to everyone. Okay.
Okay.
Please, let's do that. I don't want to give you a lot of extra work after this class ends. Okay. And everyone just remember, Olga, at the end of this class, send me all these notes. I will email it out to everyone in the group. Okay.
Okay, perfect. So that makes.
And I just want to remind everybody in the group that today the class will go till 9. Tomorrow it'll go till 9. I think that'll really help with timing and pressure. And I just want everyone to have the extra hour to really flush out any questions and just make sure that you are full attention. Olga, can you just make sure, I just want to remind you that everyone stays on mute, and I want to make sure that the messages are going. Okay. And Olga, if you're able to just go through the questions. I just want to remind all of you, there was the essay prompt. It's always one question. Al just sent a message. I was told last year there were 2 essay prompts. That is correct. Okay, so I'm just letting you know that sometimes there are 2 essay prompts, choose one. So I'm just letting you know, but for the most part, 99% of the time, it was just one straight essay prompt. Okay, all right, keep going. If you have any questions, I'm quietly on standby.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Francis. So Ms. Kweller is going to send everybody class notes. So you
yes,
don't
every single person, we will email the notes. Okay, Olga, at the end of this class, please send me one singular file of all your notes from the extra help sessions. All right, and we will send it out. Okay, so that you're not personally adding this task. Okay, go ahead.
All right, so we will do that. So you guys will have the notes from today and from the weekend. And it's good that Ms. Kweller answered Al's question as well. Okay, so let's keep going. So you guys heard me mention a lot of figurative language, a lot of literary devices. We talked about a bunch of examples, right? We saw personification, saw similes, metaphors. So I just want to make sure that you guys have a direct list of things that you can pull from when you're trying to add literary devices or figurative language into your writing. I want to make sure that you have a direct, diverse list. So you don't only use similes or only use metaphors, and you guys have examples of each of these. So that's what this list is going to do. So the first one that I want to talk about is called alliteration. So what is alliteration? Alliteration is by definition repeated consonant sounds at the beginning of words. So I'm going to define this for you, and then I'll give you guys an example. So it's commonly used to establish mood or rhythm. Yeah, somebody gave us a really good example in the chat. Eddie eats edible eclairs every evening. So that's a little bit of a tongue twister. It doesn't have to be like a tongue twister. It could just be something more simple, like I had a miserable, murky morning. And you'll notice that the consonant sounds that keep repeating in this example that I gave you is this M sound. And remember that I'm not just teaching you guys these devices for no reason. You can use these especially as a hook. So if you're ever stuck on how to write, how to begin writing, you can use any one of these figurative languages as a way to hook your reader in. So alliteration is number one. The next one that I want you guys to be comfortable with is called hyperbole. And I want to also make you guys aware that this is important in terms of essay writing, but it's also important in terms of making you guys good readers, because you will see authors using all of these same techniques that I'm teaching you guys about, right? So authors, they are writers, right? So when you're a writer, you're thinking like an author. And if you're really comfortable with all of these devices and thinking the way that an author thinks when they write, you become a better reader. So this is both helping you guys with your essays, but it's also helping you guys with reading on this exam as well. Because if you see an author using any one of these techniques, you can understand what they're doing. If you see an author opening with one of these techniques, you can understand that they're doing that in order to give you a good hook. So when they ask you a question about what is the author's purpose of opening a paragraph like that, or what is the author's purpose of introducing his idea that way, you now know, well, why would I do that as a writer? Does that make sense? And you have your answer to that to hook the reader in, for example. So that's one way that all of this is very interconnected. So it's really important that you're like playing with this idea of both reader and writer on this test. And just in general, whenever you're thinking about your reading and writing skills. Okay, so good. So somebody gave me an example of a hyperbole. She was so hungry she could have eaten a horse, or I'm so hungry I could eat a horse. So who can define hyperbole for me in the chat? So good, yeah. The definition of a hyperbole is that it's an obvious exaggeration. We're being exaggerative on purpose, and it's not meant to be taken literally. And then I'm going to steal the example you guys gave me. I'm so hungry I could eat a horse. And then we could put something like an exclamation point. Again, that's adding feeling and emotion to your essay. Okay, the next device is imagery. You guys have seen so many examples of imagery throughout the lesson today. All those examples of vivid writing are all invoking imagery. So you guys should all be very comfortable with imagery. So I'm going to define it for everybody. So imagery is literally creating mental pictures. It's showing rather than telling. So we are creating mental pictures. And we're creating them by using descriptions of the senses. This is exactly what we just did on the past 2 pages before you guys took your break. That whole big table we did, that whole table is imagery. That whole table is showing rather than telling. Those things are synonymous. Mental pictures which are created and it's done in order for the reader to see and feel and smell whatever we are experiencing. And again, remember that you're going to be doing this when you're writing your essay, but also remember that sometimes you'll see authors do this when they're writing the passage, and you can be asked about this. You could be asked, why is the narrator using these sorts of words? And the words would be adjectives. Or why is the narrator being descriptive here? And the point is in order to make you experience what the character is experiencing. And just for completion's sake of these notes, I'm going to give you guys another example of imagery. You guys should have so many examples in your head right now. So the example that is coming to my head is even the dark, shiny leaves, which usually clung to the chimney. Hung dry and brittle on that freezing afternoon. So again, this should be really clear to you guys, but what I'm doing here is I'm using adjectives. So I'm describing the leaves. I'm personifying the leaves because leaves don't literally like clung or cling. And I'm describing what's going on here, right? I'm describing that it's probably a winter day, which is why all of them are so dry and brittle. And they're kind of like frozen over and they're completely dried out, which happens in the fall, winter time. And then I'm describing the afternoon as well. So adjectives, literary device, showing rather than telling, all of the things that we're doing when we're invoking imagery. Okay, what's our next device? The next one is a metaphor. So who can define metaphor for me in the chat? And yeah, I want to appreciate all of the examples that you guys are giving us. So in the chat, people are putting really, really good examples of invoking imagery. And yeah, perfect. You guys have the definition of a metaphor. It's a comparison without using the words like or as. So almost identical to a simile, but we don't use those words. So let's get that down in our notes. Perfect. So you guys gave me a bunch of examples of metaphors in the chat. And let me steal some of them. So somebody said blanket of snow. Absolutely, you're comparing snow to a blanket. Somebody else said stormy eyes. Somebody said her heels were firecrackers. You're kind of directly stating that something was something else, but it's obvious that that thing wasn't something else. If we wanted to use another example that I can think of, we can say hot orange coals burned at the edge of the woods as the wolves watched with hungry, I'm running out of space, eagerness. So basically I'm comparing the wolves' eyes to hot orange coals in this example. Yeah, somebody said her smile was a watermelon. That's a cute one. That is definitely a metaphor. My mouth was on fire, another one. And then the next one that I want to write down is a simile, just because that's naturally what's coming next. And a simile is very similar. It's a comparison, but we are using the words like or as. So we can turn any one of these examples that you gave me of metaphors into a simile. So again, just for completeness sake, so you guys have these notes, I'm going to define a simile. So this is a comparison. Yeah, a bunch of people are asking me to go back. So I'm just going to go back, give it a minute for you guys to get these notes down, and then we'll keep going. And just make sure you guys tell me when it's okay to move on to the next page, when you guys are good with the notes. You can put a thumbs up or you can just put it in the chat. Okay, so next, like we said, a simile is a comparison between two unlike things where we do use like or as. Okay, so let me think of an example for you guys. Yeah, so somebody says eyes as deep as the ocean. Another example can be the leaf spun down to the ground like a descending helicopter. Pale as snow. He slid like a penguin, sly as a fox. The house was dark as night. The pencil glided on the page the way an ice skater sways on slippery ice. Yeah, I'm just reading out your guys' examples. These are all great. Okay, let's move on to the next device because I feel like you guys are good with the simile metaphor one. So the next one is something called onomatopoeia. Who knows what onomatopoeia is? Yeah, sound words, exactly. Using something, it's basically when something sounds like the word itself. So boom sounds like literally the sound boom, or crash sounds like a crash. Other examples are things like hiss. So a hiss literally sounds like a slithering snake. So let's give us a definition. So these are words that imitate the sound or the action they're describing. And again, I want to remind you guys that these are all good ways to start your essay. So these are all really great ways to have a hook, especially onomatopoeia, very easy, quick way. So we can think of bang, we can think of ping. So ping literally, or ding sounds like that sound. Slam, if you say it loudly, sounds like a door slamming. Hiss, squish. So all of these are words that you guys can use. All right, we just have two more that I want to get through. The next one is one that I also mentioned before, personification. So you guys saw two examples of this when we did the vivid senses part. So definition of personification is when we give an object human characteristics. An example is something like the thunder danced across the sky. Good. Another example could be the tornado snatched the house. Yeah, another example, the wind howled in the night. So all of our examples just coincidentally have to do with like things of nature, but it doesn't have to be. You can use personification in terms of like any inanimate object. Okay, and then the last one that I want to talk about is symbolism. So a symbol is when something becomes bigger than itself. It's when a word or an idea, a noun, a person, whatever it is, has additional meaning beyond just itself. So there are some really well-known symbols in our life that are kind of like everybody knows them. So if we think about like a renowned figure, for example, like if we think of Rosa Parks, she has symbolism of like civil rights and freedom and fighting for freedom, way more than just Rosa Parks means more than just the woman Rosa Parks, right? When we say Rosa Parks, we think about all the ideas that she represents. Another example is something like the American flag. It's more than just literally the flag. It represents freedom, represents America. Sure, you guys are giving great examples. Martin Luther King Jr. is another example. It doesn't have to be huge examples like that. There's a lot of biblical symbols. There's a lot of story symbols. Another basic example is a heart that can symbolize love, the peace sign, which symbolizes peace, absolutely the cross. But you could also apply things in your essays that are a little bit more like simplistic. They don't have to be these huge ideas of like peace or war, anything like that. It could be something like a basketball symbolizing like your youth, or a basketball symbolizing like a fun summer for you because you played a lot of basketball that summer. So it could be something personal, a personal symbol that you establish for the reader in your essay, and then you refer back to the basketball. And because you establish that as a symbol, every time they think of the basketball, they think about your fun summer. Or it could be a broader symbol of something that you don't really need to establish because it's like a given. All right, does anybody have any questions in terms of literary devices? This is not a like full list. There's obviously more literary devices, but I think that this gives you guys enough to choose from where you're varying your sentence structure and where you have lots of different options in terms of both hooks and anything else. One more thing that I want to bring up here is this list is also going to help you with poetry. A lot of literary devices are used in poetry. And if you have a good understanding of literary devices, you'll be able to use to analyze poems better. Somebody's asking about onomatopoeia again. So onomatopoeia are words that imitate or sound like the actions they're describing. So these are things like bang, boom, crash, kaboom, hiss, squish, all these examples that you guys see here. Pow, yeah, anything like that. Personification is defined on this page too, number 7. That's when you give something that's not human, human-like qualities. All right, so the last thing on my list is I want to review transition words with you guys. So you have a bunch of different transition words that you know what purpose to use them in. So you're not using just for example, for example, for example, for example, every time you want to signal an example. You can use for example, you can use for instance, to be specific, such as, to illustrate. So I want to make sure that you guys have a diverse set of transition words that you can use for many different purposes. And you have a list that you can kind of review right before your essay so you're comfortable with it. So that's the last thing that I want to do in terms of note taking. And then in the last few minutes that we'll have left, it'll be completely open to any questions that you guys want to ask me about the essay or any part of the test or advice, last minute studying, anything that you guys want, okay?
And Olga, if you want, you can just, if you want to, like, if someone's comfortable, if someone wants to email you an essay, you can give them tips and suggestions if someone's okay with being like a demo essay. That would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. We can do that too. If somebody wants me to demo their essay in front of everybody, we can use the last few minutes that we have to do that as well. And I can read it out loud. We can critique it, and it can be anonymous. Like, you don't have to tell everybody that you're sending it to them, and I can take your name out. All right, let's do transition words, and then we'll revisit that topic if somebody wants to send me their essay. All right, so like we mentioned, transition words are going to connect and relate ideas, sentences, paragraphs, and they are helping you with the structure of your essay. So let's write transition words. Okay, so let's make a big table. And on the left side of the table, I'm going to give you the purpose of the transition word. And then on the right side of the table, I'm going to give you all the different example transition words that you can use in order to achieve that purpose. Okay, so let's say we want to signal the addition of ideas. So the most basic word that you can use to signal the addition of ideas is just using the word and, which you guys are all familiar with. So we can use and, we can use also, we can say further, we can say furthermore, we can say to, we can say moreover, in addition to, equally important, and another. So all of these are very fair, equal words that you guys can use if we want to signify addition of ideas. Yeah, somebody added another one to add on. So the purpose of this is that you guys are comfortable with seeing that there's diversity, right? So I don't want to read an essay where you only use the word and. Does that make sense? So that does not make for a diverse essay. Instead, one time you can use furthermore, another time you can use moreover, another time you can use and. And while we're talking about diversity, it's also important to use many different types of transition. So you shouldn't only be signaling addition of ideas. You should have some addition of ideas, and then you should have an example. And then maybe you can intensify something, and then you can add another idea. Does that make sense? So you don't want to be too repetitive in either way, where you're using the same type of transition word too much, and then the same actual word to transition too much either. Okay, so that's one thing. The next one that I want to review with you guys is to signal order or sequence, which can be especially important if you're telling a story, like a narrative, which you usually are in a Hunter essay. So some of this is really self-explanatory, like first, second, third, etc. We can also use finally to signify the end of something. We can use next, last of all, gradually, before, after, in the end. Notice that a lot of these signify passing of time, which can also be important when you're telling a story or if you're trying to switch time. Okay, the next one that I want to review with you guys is example. So everybody is going to be using at least 2 or 3 of these because we definitely are including examples in our essay on test day. So the obvious one is for example. The other one that many students are familiar with is for instance. We can also say to illustrate. Can say to be specific. And then we can say such as to list examples. Okay, next, how do we show results? So what kind of transition words can show results? So an obvious one is literally stating as a result. We can also say hence. So accordingly, as a consequence, consequently, thus, therefore, for this reason or because of this reason, for this reason. Okay, the next biggie is contrast. So if I wanted you guys to really focus on any one of them, it's going to be to signal an example, to show results, and to show contrast. So all of these are the biggies that you guys should really be comfortable with because it's likely that you're going to be doing that in almost any essay that you write. So how are some ways that I can signal contrast? The big one that we went over with fanboys is just using the word but. You can literally say in contrast, conversely, however, nevertheless, yet, on the other hand, on the contrary, actually, while, despite this, ironically, all of those are ways that you guys can signify contrast. And then the last one that I want you guys to be comfortable with is intensifying. So remember I said that it's important that in your conclusion, you state why something's important. So in the conclusion would be a good time to use one of these transition words to intensify your point, to really explain its significance. So we can say above all, first and foremost, again, indeed, to be sure, as a matter of fact, as aforementioned, okay. The last thing that we didn't mention that I'll just squeeze in here on the bottom is conclusions. And I'm sure you guys are all comfortable with this. This is like to sum up in conclusion and summary, as you can see. So these are all different ways that you can open up your concluding paragraph as well. In short, finally, all of these are good aspects. As you can see. All right, so now you guys should have a direct list to pull from. So I don't want to see any sort of repetition in your transition words and any sort of confusion in how what transition words are signifying which idea. All right, so I'm gonna keep up these notes for a second. Somebody has already volunteered and sent me an essay. So I'm going to pull up their essay and then we will read it together and I will critique it live for you. So this is the first time that I'm reading this essay as well. So we're gonna kind of work through it together and see how we can improve it. And we're gonna do something called constructive criticism, which is really, really important. We're gonna mention what's good about the essay and then what can be improved. So that's a really, really good technique in terms of how to work on editing your own essays and other people's essays. So I don't want too many people to send me their essay. I already had somebody, I'm doing it kind of like first come, first serve. Somebody has already sent me an essay and volunteered. So that's the first person. If we have time to do two, we can do two. But again, the purpose of extending until 9 is to make sure that we have time for questions. And we do have a 3-hour session tomorrow. So if you guys find that it's helpful, we can absolutely do some more essays tomorrow where I live edit it in front of you guys. I'm comfortable with doing that. Tomorrow's all about stress reduction and anything that you guys need, anything that you guys request last minute. Okay, so I'm going to give you guys 3 more minutes to finish copying these notes, and then I will try to pull up that essay. All right, is everybody ready for the essay portion? All right, so some people need another minute, so I'm just gonna leave it up for 1 or 2 more minutes just because I don't want to give too much time to this. Remember that you guys are gonna get these notes. And then we will review an essay that somebody volunteered. All right, so let me try to pull up an essay in the meantime. All right, so thank you to the anonymous essay donor that decided to put themselves out there and give us this essay in order for us to learn from it. I'm going to put the prompt up here just so we have it in front of us. So the prompt is, what is your favorite book character? And how does this character exhibit a connection to you on a personal level? Okay, so we have a clear prompt. First thing that I would do as an essay grader is I'm looking at basic essay structure, and so far it looks great, right? So we want to focus on the basics as well. Notice that every single paragraph's indented. That's great. Grammar points right away. And notice that we have clear paragraph structures, and this should be evident even if it's not typed, right? So you should have a clear indentation. Make sure that you don't indent like just a tiny bit such that the reader doesn't know that you're indenting. Make it clear that you're indenting. You're following the rules of grammar. You have clear paragraphs that are split by paragraphs. And the point of indenting, you don't necessarily have to leave a space between the paragraphs. As long as you're indenting, that's going to be enough for the reader to understand that you are starting a new paragraph. And you have, it seems to be enough body paragraphs. And the overall structure from the outside, the essay looks good. Okay, so now let's get into reading it. So we have, books are an essential aspect of my entertainment, education, and even stimulate my creativity. So the first thing that I would say about this sentence is it's not an awful way to start, right? It's direct, it's clear to the point. This seems to be more of kind of like the thesis statement where we're answering the prompt right away. We're not necessarily saying what your favorite book character is, but we're saying why books are important to you. So I guess it's not so much the thesis statement, but this format of like these 3 reasons why books are great is a little bit like thesis-y. And I would try to be a little bit more of like a hook, figurative language type of beginning in my essay, right? To make it really clear to the person that's reading my essay, like scream at them, here is my hook, right? Like give me points for that. I'm doing the hook thing, right? So here would be a good way to use figurative language. You can describe sort of the texture of the pages of the book and how they make you feel and why they're an essential part of your entertainment. You can show that rather than telling it with a lot of imagery here. So that would be my first suggestion, would be to use a better hook to invoke imagery. Another thing, if I'm being a little bit nitpicky, is remember we talked about parallelity. So books are an essential aspect of my entertainment, essential aspect of my education, and even stimulate my creativity. You see how this last part is kind of unparalleled with the first two parts? So if they wanted to be annoying with grammar, you could get a little bit of points off. So this is what I would mean. Remember, you guys were asking me like, what's an example of awkward sentence structure? This could be an example of an awkward sentence because it's not perfectly parallel. It's like the first two parts are written in one way, and then the third part is like kind of switching it up, which makes the sentence a little bit awkward. Okay, next I see a transition word, which I love. Absolutely great that we're using transition words right away. This is +1, plus points. Furthermore, the characters that these books are composed of add emotion and depth, and without them, I wouldn't get any pleasure out of reading. My favorite book character would certainly be Firestar, a cat in the book series Warriors by Aaron Hunter. Okay, so it's good that at the end of the paragraph, you're answering the prompt, right? You're answering this part of the prompt. What is your favorite book character? But the last part of the prompt is not answered in your thesis. So you want to at least briefly answer how this character relates to you. Does that make sense? Why this character has this personal relationship with you? And I would say, I would give like, this is my favorite character, and I have a personal connection to this character because reason 1, reason 2, at least 2 reasons. And then you turn those into topic sentences. Does that make sense? So my commentary here would be doesn't answer thesis, doesn't address the second part of the prompt. But it's good that you're mentioning the character's name, and it's good that you are explaining where the character comes from. And I like the personal pronouns because you're making this like your point of view, your narrative. But it's really important for you to explain the personal level. So I would add explain personal connection to this character. And definitely give at least 2 to 3 reasons why. And then those reasons are going to turn into your body paragraphs, right? So you're basically, by giving yourself a strong thesis, you're creating an outline you're creating the structure of your paper. Does that make sense? Okay, let's keep reading. I was sliding indecisively from bookshelf to bookshelf, intent on finding the most engaging book in the library. So far, so good. I like the indecisively, right? Because we're being descriptive. And I like the engaging because again, we're adding adjectives. The haunting expanse of books, good, more descriptions, all full to the brim with meticulously edited words and emotions was rather overpowering, and I simply couldn't decide which to select. So we have a vocabulary word here, perfect. We have sentence structure that we're varying. Look at this comma and fanboy, which is good. My eyes, without warning, became set on one specific cover and the ambiguous title Warriors that appeared on the book. Another good vocabulary word. Then we have transition words here. Moments later, I was being carried along a complex journey through the nuance of a clan made up of cats. Another transition word. However, there was one cat in the giant army array of chapters that struck me, Firestar. Every time I read about his vile or meaningful ventures, a certain thrill enraptured my mind, and I couldn't help but be curious about his intentions or backstory. Okay, so this is a great paragraph. You're using all the strategies we talked about. The only thing that I would say is try to do a little bit more, like the most thing that you're doing here is just using adjectives. So we can elevate that a little bit higher. So try it showing rather than telling, try to invoke more imagery. And you're focusing a lot on how things looked like, right? You're describing how many books there were, or you're describing what the book, where the books were at the bookshelf. Try to allure to your other sentence, right? So you can talk about like that new book smell when you opened it. You could talk about the texture of the pages. So try to be a little bit more diverse with your descriptions, and then try to use at least one aspect of figurative language in each paragraph. So all of that is going to elevate the essay higher. Does that make sense? So let's write all that down just in case you guys are reviewing this. So here my commentary would be good vocab plus use of transition words. Try to be more diverse with your descriptions. So invoke other senses. And try to add some figurative language, at least one example. And notice that we still haven't really answered the part of the prompt with how it connects to you on a personal level. So that's still something that's in the back of my head as a grader, that we're kind of almost halfway through the answer, but we still don't have halfway through the essay, sorry, but we still don't have a full answer to the prompt. Okay, without such a sophisticated character, again, this is a good vocab word and it's a good adjective. I simply couldn't have found such joy or a will to continue reading. So this is a little bit in parallel. If you're saying such joy, you could just say or will. Does that make sense? It's weird to add the a there and split that. Such joy or will to continue reading. The stories of Firestar's backstory. So this is a little bit, I think, repetitive, saying stories and then backstory again. I would maybe change this to background. That makes him different from the rest of the cats. I would take the there out. Alters the emotions emitted by the book. Instead of being a simplistic tale of a group of wild cats, the story evolves to a more modern, recognizable reference to the struggles of someone that, due to factors they couldn't control, faced difficulties in fitting in with their peers and was often scorned due to this. Okay, so this sentence, let's notice how long the sentence is. Instead of being a simplistic tale of a group of wild cats, comma, 1, the story evolves to a more modern, comma, 2, recognizable reference to the struggles of someone that, comma, due to factors that they couldn't control, comma, faced difficulties in fitting in with their peers, comma, and was often scorned due to this. So this is another example of what I would say is a little bit of awkward sentence. It's very, very long. And when you're reading such a long sentence as a reader, you kind of tend to lose meaning of what you're trying to say. So I can see that what you are trying to say there is good. It's a good thought, but because it's so wordy and so many commas, you lose the meaning. So this is an example of an awkward sentence, and we can edit this to make this much more clear, much better. So I like the use of contrast here and this transition word. So we can say this instead of being a simplistic tale, and instead of, I would say about a group of cats, the story evolves to a more modern, recognizable reference to the struggles of someone facing difficulties fitting in with their peers, period. And then you can go on and say, because of the struggle that Firestar faced, he was constantly scorned by his peers. And we can continue that. Because of the ... then you can say he was scorned by his peers. And again, we finished another body paragraph, and this is a good place for you to make that connection, right, on a personal level. Is this your favorite character because you have also faced a similar struggle, or you've seen somebody close to you face that similar struggle, right? This is a good place for you to continue that thought. So this would be a really, really good place for you to answer the second part of that prompt. Okay, if we, well, the prompt is asking, how does this character exhibit a connection to you? This is the second part of the prompt that we want to make sure that we answer as well. Okay. All right, characters generally are vital to the structure of a story. They add to the depth, personality, and the message that could be contrived from the book. This is a good vocab word. Even stock characters with predictable personalities and not much significance in relation to the main plot allow for the story to be a relatable tale. I always found that I could find similar features between a background character and I. So this should be background character and myself, or and me. even if I couldn't relate to one of the main characters. In addition, I always enjoyed the dialogue and communication between any of the people, animals, or even objects referenced in the story, as it allows for great humor and clues me in on the things going on the story if I was confused. So notice that we're veering from the topic a little bit here. So it seems like here you're just arguing that you like characters and characters are important, but the prompt is asking you to talk about one specific character and why you relate to them. So I'm not sure because I didn't read this book, but is Firestar a side character? Because that's not clear from your description here. So you want to say Firestar is not the main character, and that's partly why I relate to them, because I never relate to the main character, right? You want to tie it in with the prompt. You don't want to like go off this isn't a prompt about like, tell me why you like reading books. You want to make sure that you're answering the question that they give you in every single paragraph. And it seems like this paragraph is a little bit off topic. You're not connecting this back to your thesis in any way. In fact, you don't even mention Firestar here, which is the character, and that's what the prompt is asking you to do, to explain why someone's your main character and how you relate to them. And this whole paragraph is kind of not answering that prompt at all. Okay, last paragraph. Firestar contributed to the depth of the series Warriors and was the main factor encouraging me to continue reading. So this is good. This is the use of a metaphor. I'm happy that we found at least one figurative language example here. His experiences, especially due to his different origins and the others, referenced issues found in society nowadays and made me exhilarated to continue reading. Therefore, I find that books and the characters that make them up are vital to the appeal of the story. As in the case of Warriors, Firestar was the cat that perfectly embraced every task needed for a character to be considered sophisticated and great. Okay, so overall, good use of transition words. Good way of summarizing, but the problem here is that you never answered that question in the prompt of how you relate to Firestar personally. And then overall, the structure of the essay is good. The grammar wasn't bad. There are some sentences that could be improved, like the ones I pointed out. I would encourage you to really stay away from that really long, wordy sentence. You kind of did it again here. Look at this sentence is like 5 lines typed. You should stay away from that. That means that your sentence is too long. The more that you do that, the more likely it is that there's a grammatical mistake in there, right? You can't just keep putting commas and keep your thought going and going and going. It's really likely that there's a run-on somewhere in there. And then the main critique with this essay would be that you don't fully answer the prompt. But overall, lots of good aspects to this essay that I do want to highlight as well. Okay. Anybody have questions with how I edited this essay? Okay, so then do you guys want me to do one more essay? Yeah, absolutely. I want to read some of the positive things that you guys have stated so far. So people have been saying that this essay has really good use of language and words. I agree. Transition words were really, really good. Okay, good. I like that you guys like this. So somebody has just sent me another essay. So let me try to open that up for us. So I know that a lot of you guys want to share your essays and we're short on time. So what I'm doing is I'm just going in order based on who sent it to me first. And that's the person's essay that I'm putting up. Again, if this is something that you guys, like, then absolutely we can do this tomorrow as well. I'm going to send these essays also. There's no names attached, so I feel comfortable sending them. And hopefully I did a good enough job annotating. I feel like I was more verbal. but I can add some extra notes when I let go, just so everything that I said is on paper if you guys are looking back to this. Okay, just give me 1 second. I'm working on getting the next essay up. And again, I don't even know whose essay I'm opening. I'm literally just going in order of the emails that I got. So don't be upset if it's not your essay. Okay, so we have a prompt up here. So prompt, tell us about the first place you remember visiting that made an impact on you. It can be in New York City or any place you've been. So tell us about the first place that made an impact on you. So this lovely person outlined. I absolutely recommend outlining. I always outline before I write. This is a great way to outline using the who, what, when, where technique. That's a great way to outline. I usually like draft my thesis and I do like three reasons. Okay. Tell us about the first place you remember visiting that made an impact on you. My thoughts whisked me back to the summer of 2021 when I sat in front of the small campfire on a stool. Okay, so this is an okay hook. I would absolutely count this as a hook. It's a little bit of a cop-out because you're literally restating the prompt. But if I was the grader, I would be lenient, and I think this is like a cute way to start. But again, they like things like figurative language, imagery. So if you want to really be certain that you're getting the prompt point, I would stick to doing one of those things. But I do like how immediately after you do invoke imagery, my thoughts whisked me back. So this is a little bit of personification because your thoughts can't literally whisk you back. So I like the immediate use of figurative language. I like that you establish the setting, but again, we talked about showing rather than telling. So you can show that you're in a summer month rather than directly saying it. I like that you're describing the campfire by saying small campfire. And I think we can do a little bit better than small. We can be a little bit more descriptive here as well. But I do see the attempts with the adjectives. I could smell the strong smell of smoke and barbecue, and that smell you smell outside, the fresh smell, I called it. Okay, so at first I was going to comment that you're being a little bit repetitive with smell, but my guess might be that you did it on purpose. If you did it on purpose, I can see how that could be like a creative technique that you used, which I could appreciate. I think that there's like a way to do it a little bit better. Instead of directly saying that you could smell the strong smell, I would say something like the smell of smoke and barbecue. You could say attacked my nostrils, just like the example that I gave you guys earlier today. And you can say that smell is what I call the fresh smell, something like that, right? So this is a good place where you could show rather than tell. Instead of directly saying that you could smell, you could show that you're smelling it. Okay, the chattery of the adults. I'm not sure if this is a word. I would probably say the chatter, or maybe this was just a typo. The chatter of the adults provoked me to turn my head to check the dining tables underneath the white canopy that stood sturdily on our campsite. Okay, good adjectives. You're describing the canopy. You're describing how it stood. A person approached me with quiet footsteps, thanks to the damp soil that enveloped the ground. I turned around to see Jacelyn, my friend, wearing a blue fluffy sweater and thin black pants. It was the end of July and we were at Lackawanna State Park. Okay, so this is a good first paragraph. There's a lot of imagery. Things can be improved here. Like I said, you're invoking your senses, which is already good, but you can do a little bit of a better job of showing rather than telling. There are a lot of adjectives, but I would encourage you to up the vocabulary a little bit. So we can use a better word than small, better word than quiet, better word than white. This could be a good place for you to use a metaphor or a simile. Colors are usually really easy to compare. So you can say underneath the white as snow canopy, something like that, an easy way to invoke a simile. So you can put a simile here. And you can, ivory canopy is a better word than white. Yeah, good idea. And then up the vocabulary. Even instead of using the word smell, you can use the word aroma, which is a little bit of a stronger word. Up vocabulary. That's going to be my comment here. And then I like that you end with this place. But I would urge you to also have a more clear thesis in terms of like stating out specifically how that place made an impact on you. Just to make it more clear, like, here's my thesis, like, here's the answer to my, to the prompt that you're asking me. Okay. All right. I wouldn't say that you have to capitalize summer. So I wouldn't do that. During the summer, me, my family, and friends go camping. So this is a little bit of a tense shift. So here you're talking about past tense, and here you're talking about past tense, whisked me back. All of this is past tense. I called it. And then it's weird that here all of a sudden you switch to present tense. So I would say during the summer, my family, friends, and I. So you don't start with me. You would rewrite this and say my family, friends, and I. And then you would say went camping, yeah. Or you would say during the summers, my family, friends, and I commonly go camping. If you want to make it present tense, and if that's what you're trying to say, you could say that, but the way that you are saying it right now makes it seem like during this one summer you go camping, so you're switching tenses. Does that make sense? So I would say this went. In the year 2021, we decided to go camping at Lackawanna State Park. It is constituted of beautiful stately pine trees and clears out to a captivating and crystal clear river. Okay, so really good language here. Beautiful stately pine trees, captivating crystal clear river. Those are good. The only problem is I would say it's a little bit in parallel here, because notice you're saying it is constituted, which is past tense, and then clears out, which is again present tense. So here you would lose points based on grammar because you're flip-flopping again. So whenever you're not consistent, that's a grammatical problem, because that has to do with parallelity too, not just grammar shifts. So be careful not to switch tenses. But great use of adjectives here. And this can even be argued for some alliteration. Captivating, crystal clear. Yeah, good. Okay, let's keep reading. So there are cabins and spaces for campers and a huge asphalt road in between each row of camping spaces where cars drive and people bike and walk. Okay, so this is fine. This is like you're describing the setting. I think, again, this is a place where you can show rather than tell. So instead of directly instead of directly saying there are cabins, there are these, there's that, I would try to make the reader feel like you're there. You could say something like, to the left is a row of cabins. Like you could still say it, but be a little bit more descriptive. Instead of there is, give it directionality, make it feel like the person is literally there. That's another technique that you can use instead of just saying, here's that, and there's that, and there's that. Notice that you're using the word small again to describe. Again, it's good that you're adding an adjective, but you already used small earlier in your essay. So I would try to add a little bit diverse language. So you could say a thin trail, or any other trail that you want, any other description word that you want, just be diverse. So be careful of repetitive adjectives. It leads to an enormous swimming pool with magnificent and statuesque views from above. Okay, this is good. Enormous is a good word. Magnificent is a good word. You can leave a semicolon here. That's fine. And I like that you're being diverse. with sentences. You could also leave a colon here since this is directly describing the subject of the sentence. I think a colon might be a little bit better here, but technically it's not wrong to use the semicolon. I like the transition word near. I'm getting a sense of what's where. Near the swimming pool is a mini water park where there are sprinklers and small arches that spray water. So if you use the where descriptively, like you are here, there should be a comma here. Across it, good, more directionality is a small playground with slides and climbing equipment. Each of these characteristics enthralls me as it makes it seem like a perfect campground. So again, why is it a perfect campground? Why is it enthralling you? You can do a better job here. Like you just described everything and you're like, yeah, it was like big and nice and here's all these things and that's what makes the perfect campground. So you can invoke a little bit more emotion here. What did it make you feel like? What did it remind you of? Why was it a perfect campground? Maybe it made you feel peaceful, made you feel comfortable, made you feel connected to nature, whatever it is. Try to elevate this reason of why this place had an impact on you more than just describing it. Does that make sense? So this is the important part of the prompt that you want to answer. And that's the part of the prompt that you didn't include in your thesis yet and that there's still no answer to when we're about halfway through your essay. Even with these ideal characteristics, the Lackawanna State Park still continues to impress me and other campers there. Okay, this is a good way to start this paragraph. You're transitioning, which is good. Lackawanna State Park is a place where many family and friends gather. It allowed me to experience a sense of freedom and independence. We had camped there for a good amount of time for me and Jocelyn to adapt to it and remember all the possible routes to take. My dad and mom, having both been busy, allowed me and Jocelyn to bike around the campsite by ourselves. Never have I ever felt a sense of independence and freedom as then. We hurriedly brought our bikes out and started to bike down the trail, whether we had to go up, down, left, or right. Could feel a wind in my hair as we raced. Okay, good. Feeling of excitement filled me as here I was with Jacelyn without an adult biking around the campsite. No adult to order us when to stop, when to start, and which way to go. We got to decide ourselves. Okay, perfect. So this is a really good paragraph because you are answering the prompt. The problem is that you don't mention this independence idea before. So in order for this to be perfect, you would create a thesis here and you would say, this Lackawanna State Park it made an impact on me because it was the first time I felt independent. And then you would follow that up with that paragraph describing your independence, giving that narrative of you and Jacelyn running around, perfect. Giving that narrative of you don't have to listen to instructions from adults, giving that narrative of you felt freedom with the wind in your hair and whatever else. Does that make sense? So what you want to do is you want to give us this in the thesis, just a hint of it, right? You want to say Lackawanna State Park made an impact of me because it made me feel independent and it made me feel closer to nature, right? That's a good enough thesis. And then you have one paragraph on the independence, one paragraph on the nature. And then on the nature part, that's when you can add all of these descriptions, right? So these descriptions in your second body paragraph or in your first body paragraph, rather, they're not bad. The problem is that there's no topic sentence to put them all under, right? They're just details, but there's no umbrella to put them under. So if we want to put them under nature, and then we put the nature umbrella under why it had an impact on you. And then the independence is another umbrella under the impact. Does that make sense? So we want to fix the structure of the essay a little bit. But the content is good. And this paragraph is a really good example of the way that you should answer the prompt. Okay, and then here's your second reason. It helped you to find simple pleasures. Absolutely. This is another good example of answering the prompt, but you should introduce this idea into your thesis. So what you have is you have two topic sentences, but the problem is that you don't mention those ideas in your thesis originally. We would get into my dad's gray SUV that carried a small yellow kayak on top and drive to the lake that was nearby. My uncle and dad would unload the kayak as me, Jacelyn, Coral, and Christopher and Kevin would look afar, occasionally, finally, good transition word. After we would take roads when the turn came in, paddle out. I observed the beautiful scenery of Lackawanna State Park, the colorful trees, ripples in the water, and the quiet peace. So got to the swimming pool. I splashed and swished. So this is a good use of onomatopoeia. Closing my eyes, calling Marco Polo. This is a good way of invoking, like, it's not really dialogue, but it makes you feel like you're there, right? It relates back to like we've all played Marco Polo. And I like your use of all the characters' names in your personal life. That makes it more narrative. Okay, good. So this is another good paragraph. My thing would be, again, you can use words that are better than beautiful. You can be a little bit more descriptive. You can use more figurative language and imagery to describe how beautiful the river is and why it made you feel like peace. You could say like there was not even like one wave. The river was entirely like as if nobody has ever touched it. That's how peaceful it was, blah, 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 blah. So you can do a better job with the imagery here and the showing rather than telling, but this is the type of way that you need to answer the prompt. You're answering why the park was meaningful to you. Again, the only thing is that this should have been mentioned in the thesis as well. And then here in your conclusion, you restate your thesis: finding peace, observing your growth, and gaining independence. And all of that is why Lackawanna State Park made an impact on you. So this here is your thesis, and it's great. You summarized it. The only problem is that you never mentioned it in the beginning. So make sure that you mention this thesis in your introduction. Okay, so I want to say thank you so much for the 2 people that volunteered to put their essays out there. Both essays were good, but like always, this is constructive criticism. If you guys have any questions for me, now's the time. We have about 10 minutes. You guys can ask me any question at all, and I will do my best to answer it. So somebody is saying, how do you... one second. So somebody's saying, how do you adapt to a prompt? How do you adapt to a prompt when you don't have much to say about it? So that's why we're practicing, right? For you to have much to say about almost every prompt they can throw at you. Within these notes that we started in the beginning, there's a lot of examples of prompts. And you'll notice that even if the prompts aren't identical, they're all kind of getting at similar things. So make sure that you have examples of that in your head, things that are important to you, things that contribute to your values. New York City is a really big one that comes up a lot. Books or characters that are meaningful to you. It's going to be ultimately a narrative essay. Does that make sense? So make sure that you have ways to answer about your own personal values.
Olga, everybody, as we're winding down, we have 5 minutes left. I want to take a moment, and I think it's really important that you remember, stay very calm, stay very focused. If you don't know what to write about, just remember, make it up. Make it up, okay? Don't forget, all right? Olga's going to send me the notes afterwards. Olga, if you could just elaborate on the whole make it up theme, that's very important, okay? Because I think that students need to remember there's no polygraph test here, okay? We're not testing veracity of an essay. We're testing on vivid imagery, elevated vocabulary, transition, structure, intro, body, conclusion, okay? So Olga, if you could just close up with that. I want to remind all of you we're going to go through 9 tomorrow as well. All right, go ahead. I'm really proud of you. Olga, please help close up with that.
Yeah, exactly. So as Mrs. Kweller was telling us, nobody's going to, follow you to your house and see if you really live on that really busy street that smells like whatever you describe it as. You don't have to make things up completely, but we want to fluff up the essay, right? That's what we're being graded on. We want to be as creative as possible, and that's going to take your essay to the next level, right? That's the whole goal. You want your essay to stand out from the other 100 students that they are reading. That's ultimately our goal. And that's why I'm giving you all these tools that are now in your toolboxes. With how to use vivid imagery and how to really take a really simple sentence. Like, look at these examples that we did together. We took something really simple, like the sky was blue or the rock was rough, and we restated that in a way that elevated the whole sentence. And again, you don't need to do that to every single sentence, but at least 1 or 2 examples of this per paragraph will literally elevate your essay completely. It'll be a completely different essay. The most important thing to me for you guys is the structure that we talked about. Please get really comfortable with this essay structure. You want to have an introduction with a clear thesis, and then every single body paragraph is going to have a topic sentence that goes back to that thesis. That structure is really, really important. Once you have that structure, that's all you need. And then you elevate it with all these little techniques that we learned, and that's what you need for a good essay. Yeah, anybody else has any questions? You guys can come and put them in the chat.
Everyone, let's type thank you to Olga in the chat box because I forced her to stay for an extra hour. All right, let's go, Olga. Thank you, everyone.
No problem. I want you guys to be calm and I want you guys to be confident because you've been practicing all along. And I want you guys to keep practicing in these last 3 days. Do not give up in these last 3 days. Last 3 days are really, really important.
Oh, everyone, we're finishing up right now. So let me see what I wanted to do. Everyone, let's unmute. Let's say thank you, Olga. Ready? We're going to count to 3. I'm unmuting everybody. Ready? We're going to count to 3.
Thank you.
We're going to say thank you.
Olga.
1. I'm going to count to 3. Count to 3. 1, 2, 3. Thank you, Olga. Thank you, Olga. Olga, you're the best. Thank you, Olga.
Thank you,
Olga,
Olga.
thank you.
Olga.
This for 3 hours.
Thank you very much. That was very helpful.
Olga, you're the best. Olga, we love
I have a
you.
question.
Olga, you're the bestest of the best. Michelle, you're the best.
Thank you.
Michelle, everybody, my little one's gonna say Olga, you're the best.
Thank you, everybody. You guys are the best.
so
You're the best.
Olga, you're the best. Thank you for doing this by force for 3 hours. Do you ever miss the job, Olga? Do you ever just like miss being here all the time in person? Do you ever miss your first home away from home? Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, I do.
Let's go say hi. Wait, let's go see Olga. You want to go see Olga? Come, Michelle. Go look at Olga. Michelle, look. Michelle, she doesn't want to go. Sorry, Olga. Come say hi. Hi, Michelle. What are you reading? You want to share what you're reading? Share what you're reading. We're reading a bedtime story. All right. Say hi. Michelle, say bye. Olga, say you're the best. Come, show her. Let her see how cute you are. Let her see how cute you are. Say bye, Olga. Say thank you. Say thank you, Olga. Say bye. Give a kiss. Blow kiss. Blow kiss. Look at what a good listener she is, right? You can tell my kids are trained, right? All right. Bye, Olga. Thank you. Okay.
Bye. If anybody has any questions, I can stay on for another 5 minutes.
Oh my God. This is definitely not.
I have questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I was trying to ask him earlier, but I was trying lots of stuff, but he must not have got it. Like the direct messages didn't work.
I'm exiting out. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Enjoy. Bye, guys. Make me proud.
All right, everybody that doesn't have questions, you guys are free to go, and then I'll stay for the next 5-10 minutes to answer any questions. Yeah, go ahead, Elliot. I'm sorry.
It's fine. I have a few questions. Is that fine?
Yeah.
Okay. So is there a good way, keep that page open. Is there a good way to transition the hook to the thesis statement in the introduction?
Yeah, so I find that usually I put a few filler sentences in between, right? Because you can't really go from like a hook to like, here's what the whole thing is. So I usually put a few filler sentences in between to make that connection. You don't have to use like a specific transition word, but it does take like 1 or 2 sentences. I hope, does that answer the question?
Kind of. Maybe can you give me an example of the example you put in right here?
Sure. So let's say
your hook is like something maybe like boom, those are the sounds of New York City or something like that.
Yeah, boom, those are the sounds of New York City. And then you can say something like those sounds are familiar to me as I hear them every morning and every morning when I get up from bed and every night as I wind down. And these sounds remind me of home. And then growing up in New York City has helped me, blah, 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 blah.
Okay,
that makes sense.
Yeah, that's what I wanted. Having as a question, how strict are the essay graders on quotation marks and contractions?
So the grammar is overall given to you as like on a scale of 1 to 3. So if your grammar, if there's like 1 mistake, I feel like you'll still get a 3. If there's 2 more mistakes, that'll probably bring you down to 2. They don't release the exact rubric. This is just an estimate from like what we think from, you know, preparing students for so long and speaking to students after the exam. But if I had to give you sort of my educated guess, that would be it. So they're not like super strict, like they're going to go with a microscope. It's like an overall assessment of your grammar. So if overall your grammar is pretty good, you'll get full credit. If there's common mistakes, commonly like commas that shouldn't be there, awkward sentences that are too long, they'll knock you down.
Okay, what I was asking is like with the specifically quotation marks and like contractions, because I've done an essay, and when it was graded, they did say like something about use less quotation marks and less.
I mean, as long as your whole essay is in quotation marks, you want to make sure that you hear your voice, not just somebody else's dialogue. That's probably why that tutor gave you that
Okay.
feedback. And then the thing with contractions is it just sounds a little bit less formal if you're using like a lot of contractions instead of spelling those words out. But again, I don't think that's something that you really need to like harp on. These bigger ideas like structure and thesis, vivid language are way more important than like, if you use one contraction, that's not going to take away from your score. If you use
Okay.
one line of dialogue or 2 lines of dialogue, that's not going to take away from your score.
Okay, this is pretty much my last question. Maybe I'll ask one more. How would you really, like, how would you implement the symbol figurative language? Like, how would you put it into your essay?
So, I mean, it depends on things like, for example, if we think about the favorite character prompt, you can directly say like, this was my favorite character because to me, the character symbolizes blah, 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 blah. And then you just explain why it symbolizes that. If you want to reference like to a pop culture symbol, you could say something like New York City is important to me because it reminds me of whatever symbol, right? Let's say the American flag, and then it's already known what the American flag symbolizes. You can build on that a little more. You kind of just directly refer to the symbol. Does that make sense?
Yes. Okay, I'm good, I think. Thank you.
Perfect. You're welcome. Let me see some other questions that people put in the chat. Are we going to review sample essays? So honestly, Mrs. Francis extended the class tomorrow just right now. So I don't have a direct plan for what we're going to do tomorrow. I know she wanted me to cover strategies like stress strategies. So we're definitely going to do that. But I absolutely think she wouldn't mind if that's something that you guys want me to do more of, review more sample essays from volunteer students. I will be more than happy to do that. But I'm going to discuss with her kind of what the plan is for tomorrow, but definitely we're going to do stress strategies. And I think that would be a great thing to answer like last minute questions that you guys have. We'll do more of an open Q&A, and I'm more than comfortable with doing more essays, especially if you guys think that's helpful. Somebody's asking for a perfect essay. I can search through my notes of like people from last year that I think had a really, really good essay. And I can also ask Ms. Francis, who has, you know, like way more tutors who have access to more students to find a really great essay so we can model it out. That's something I have to ask her and look through my old students and ask them, of course, their permission if I can send out a model essay. But I definitely don't have one like in front of me that I can share right now, but it's something that I can try to think about tonight and tomorrow during the day. Will there be a class on Wednesday? As of right now, no. It's something that we were discussing, but it's not confirmed at all. So as of right now, no. If there will be, we will let you know tomorrow. I try to avoid questions when people ask me like, what grade would I recommend on the essay? The essay is worth a big portion of your score. The Hunter test cares a lot about it. I don't know a numerical number to give you because they don't really release that kind of information, but just aim to do as good as you can do. And if you employ all these strategies, that's all you need. Okay, if anybody has any other questions, I think the unmuting thing should work now. So you guys can just unmute yourself. There's just a little bit of us left. Or you can just put in the chat. And I am gonna send all of these notes to Mrs. Kweller right now. Okay, Rohan, I think that I already sent you yesterday's notes, did I not? You can email either or. If you want them right now, while I'm working right now, I can send it to you right away. But Mrs. Kweller said that she's going to send all these notes out. So I'm going to put it all in one document right now. See all of these notes. I'm going to put it all in one document. I'm going to send it to Mrs. Kweller, and she said she's going to get these out to all of you guys. But if you want these like right this minute, there's only like 6, 7 of you left. It's not too much work. You guys can just email me. And I'll respond right now. I'm not sure why you can't unmute. I think I meant to turn off the settings, but Miss Kweller might have changed that and she was host. So I don't know if I can fix that right now. Sorry, guys. Please email me on my Kweller email. I'll put it in the chat again. All right, do you guys have any other questions for me? Thank you guys so much for joining. I know my sessions are usually early or late. That's just because my schedule is crazy with med school. But I really appreciate that you guys are here. I hope you find it useful. Somebody's asking if you can start an essay with a story. Yeah, absolutely. That is a good hook as well. As long as your story isn't too long, right? You don't want to have like an essay within an essay. I don't know how to unmute you, honestly.
Yeah, thank you. I have 2 questions.
Sure.
My first question is how many questions do you have to get right on the multiple choice in order to get them to read your essay?
Again, that's not something I can answer. You know, I don't make the Hunter test. Like if I knew that answer, I would tell you. I don't even think it's something that they release. That's a question that you can ask Miss Kweller just because she has more experiences. But I really don't know the answer to that. I'm sorry, honey.
Okay, also my second question is for the when you're writing your notes, can you kind of like, because I couldn't really read some of the words you put, so can you like, and you was writing like super fast, so can you slow down and can you also make your words a little
Bigger,
clearer, please?
Yeah, sure. I can work on that. I can work on that too.
Yeah, because here's one that's like, I think it said 4 mentioned, I don't know.
Okay. You're gonna have the notes, you'll be able to zoom in. And then if you're still confused, you can like email me a screenshot and say, what did this say? And I'll always answer you. And then absolutely, I'll try to be more clear and slower tomorrow.
Okay, have a nice night.
Good night, thank you. Can I unmute you? Yeah, whoever has questions, you guys can just, I don't know why it won't let you to unmute because my settings is that you guys can unmute.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm able to. I just wanted to ask that, like would it, like, I know like half of the students that go, like get through the multiple choice section, get through the essay section. So like, would you have to get like a like 8 out of 10 and above to get in? Or like what would be a good grade on like a Hunter essay for you?
I mean, out of 10, I would aim for at least a 7 out of 10, 8 out of
Okay.
10. Yeah. If I had to put a number to it, but don't take that as like, you're not going to get in. Like Olga said, you're not going to get in if you don't get a 7 out of 10. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying it's not released. I don't know the answer, but if I had to put a number on it and I had to give you like my best guess, that's what I would say.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure like I'm pretty sure that they basically just compare all the essays together and then they just choose the best ones.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So so how do you have like a list, like if you list out all your reasons and have like a thesis statement and have like a topic sentence and like you restate your thesis sentence in like the conclusion, I don't really understand how like to differentiate this personal narrative to like a persuasive essay that we would like write in school.
Yeah, I see what you mean. The difference is that you still need to have that thesis, but what makes this a narrative is that you're using way more I, me, and the way that you're backing up you're still persuading them of something, right? You're trying to answer the question of what something means to you. So you're trying to persuade them that that's what it means to you. So in a way it is persuasive. I see what you mean, but you're not just persuading them of something random. You're still using your own experiences, your own descriptions, your own narrative stories to make that argument. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's the main difference.
Okay, thank you.
For the symbol, like how would you why would you use that? Like how, like in what situation would you use that?
So it's just another tool in your toolbox. The same way that you can use a simile or a metaphor, you can choose to refer to a symbol. It's not something that you have to use. You don't have to use every single figurative device that we talked about. It's just another option. Does that make sense?
Okay, yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. Good night.
Bye.
Bye. Does anybody have any other questions? I don't want to keep this running for too long. So if nobody has any other questions for me, I'm going to go ahead and end this. And then I will see you all tomorrow, okay? Let me check. Did I get the email you sent? Yes, I got the email. I will reply. Just give me a second. Let me end this and then I'll answer all the emails.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Good night, guys. Okay, I'm going to end this for everybody. Right?
Bye.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.